Welcome to this exploration of school choice versus district enrollment. We will rethink how families access schools, weighing autonomy, fairness, and stability. Throughout, we'll connect research evidence with policy design and use images and diagrams as signposts for key trade-offs. By the end, you'll see how enrollment, housing, and technology shape opportunities and what practical steps can improve equity. To ground the discussion, let's map the main influences on enrollment. Family circumstances and preferences interact with institutional factors like performance, diversity, and resources. Above these, cite policies, vouchers, charters, or open enrollment that set the rules of the game. Surveys, administrative data, and interviews hinted at in the table help us understand how these layers produce different outcomes. Research on this topic has moved in three phases. Early work before 2015 built foundations and tested emerging models. A quiet period followed, then publications surged again after 2021 as policy shifts and new technologies raised fresh questions. The chart imagery signals momentum continuing toward 2025, with studies increasingly factoring in social context and funding alongside test score outcomes. Balancing academic gains with community equity is the central tension. Evidence shows benefits often accrue to already advantaged families, while segregation can intensify when students cluster by background. The colorful stack on this slide underscores trade-offs. Policy should respect parental agency, yet guard fair access. Successful designs anticipate these dynamics to avoid widening gaps across neighborhoods and schools. Policy design clearly shapes results. Charter and choice models can raise achievement in some places, but effects vary with governance quality. Voucher programs show targeted benefits, while district zoning frequently mirrors neighborhood inequality. At the same time, districts often provide stability and cohesion. The arrows here remind us outcomes hinge on how reforms are built and implemented. Comparing reform types, we see a familiar pattern. Choice-based approaches often lift satisfaction but produce mixed academic results and pose segregation risks. Traditional district assignment offers predictability and system cohesion, yet can lock in disparities unless addressed. The table highlights the bottom line. There is no one winner. Equity and effectiveness depend on careful, context-aware trade-offs. Schools also adapt to competition. Choice schools tend to specialize in market programs, which can inadvertently pull resources from instruction. District schools may prioritize student retention, sometimes resorting to short-term fixes. Effective policy, as the markers suggest, should combine the strengths of both systems, protect instructional quality, and align incentives with long-term learning rather than strategic maneuvering. Technology expands access while raising equity risks. Virtual schools and data-driven enrollment platforms widen options, yet algorithmic systems can embed bias and digital divides leave some families behind. The icons point to both opportunity and hazard. The remedy is straightforward but demanding. Adopt equity-focused tools, ensure connectivity, and audit algorithms so innovation doesn't deepen participation gaps. Here we compare enrollment models. School choice emphasizes parental autonomy and promotes innovation, especially in underperforming areas. Yet critics warn of segregation and unequal resources. District-based assignment anchors access in communities and is often perceived as fair, but it can feel rigid and slow to change. The takeaway is to recognize strengths and guard against predictable weaknesses in each approach. Neighborhood housing patterns profoundly shape schools. Residential segregation influences who attends which campuses. District zoning often reinforces these divides. School choice can cut across boundaries to reduce segregation or worsen sorting if left unchecked. The illustration points to inclusionary zoning as a promising tool, especially when housing and school policies are coordinated to expand access and diversity. Our review followed a Prisma-style process. We searched multiple databases, screened hundreds of records, and examined empirical and theoretical work for rigor and relevance. After eligibility checks, a small set of high-quality studies, about 18 from an initial pool near 900, formed the evidence base. This transparent pathway helps ensure the claims you'll hear rest on solid research. Side by side, technology and housing shape equity in both traditional and choice systems. Digital access broadens reach but can concentrate advantage where connectivity is strong. Zoning and housing markets determine who can realistically get to preferred schools. Policy feedback loops then reinforce patterns. The table signals a clear need. coordinated reforms across education, housing, and technology to improve fairness. Let's zoom out to trends. Publications grew early, paused around 2015-2018, and rebounded strongly from 2021 onward. The dominant emphasis has been on what drives school selection. Emerging work examines hybrid enrollment models, while secondary themes look at system relations and policy outcomes. A simple line chart of yearly counts would show these phases and the recent acceleration. From the evidence, several insights stand out. There is no universal solution. Local capacity and design matter most. Each model brings strengths and weaknesses, and blending can capture complementary benefits. Parental agency is uneven, often favoring families with more information and resources. The practical message is to pair autonomy with safeguards so access and outcomes improve together. Why do academic gains vary so much? Rigorous, well-regulated urban charters often deliver measurable improvements. Underregulated or rural programs show smaller or even negative effects. District systems provide stability but can perpetuate resource inequities. What matters most is implementation quality and equitable resourcing. In short, invest in execution and supports rather than assuming any model will work everywhere. Technology and housing together drive participation gaps. Limited broadband or devices blunt the benefits of remote or blended learning for low-income students, while housing segregation shapes a school's racial and socioeconomic mix. The grid on this slide reinforces a key point. Education reforms must be paired with digital equity efforts and coordination with housing policy to change composition. So instead of a rigid choice versus district debate, think flexibility. Controlled choice blends family autonomy with equity safeguards, using rules and data to balance preferences with fair access. Adaptable local frameworks can reflect demographics and institutional strengths. Policymakers should prioritize what works in practice over ideological purity, building systems that protect opportunity while keeping communities cohesive. We should also be clear about research limits. Much evidence is US-centric and biased towards significant findings. Studies lean quantitative, often overlooking cohesion and well-being. We need more methodological diversity, broader global comparisons, and longitudinal designs that track outcomes like teacher retention. Addressing these gaps will sharpen guidance for equitable, sustainable enrollment reform. What drives school choice decisions? Family socioeconomic status and preferences about quality, proximity, and activities set the stage. Institutions influence access through performance data, resource distribution, and policies like vouchers or open enrollment. The consequences appear in both achievement and social outcomes such as segregation. Designing policy with these drivers in mind is essential to avoid unintended disparities. School choice delivers real benefits for participating students, higher test scores or graduation rates in some contexts, but the gains skew toward advantaged families, and segregation can increase through self-selection. This creates tension between individual advantage and community fairness. The images underscore the duality. Autonomy can thrive, yet without safeguards it risks deepening social and racial divides. Enrollment and funding policies shape who learns where and with what resources. Choice and charter reforms alter organizational behavior with mixed academic impacts. District zoning stabilizes communities but can entrench disparities. Funding reforms promise equity yet face political and administrative hurdles. The table's final column reminds us that context and capacity determine whether reforms advance fairness. Comparing models, choice often raises parental satisfaction and perceived quality but risks student stratification. District systems offer cohesion and predictability yet struggle to overcome built-in inequities. Competition can spur innovation but may also drain resources from schools serving disadvantaged students. The policy lesson is to design context-sensitive blends that preserve access, equity safeguards, and incentives to improve. Here is a simple framework linking the forces at work. Enrollment systems and choice mechanisms shape school composition. Technology expands access but can split participation when connectivity is uneven. Housing segregation determines baseline demographics and can overwhelm policy goals. Cross-sector coordination aligns these pieces. Equity outcomes emerge from how these elements interact and how feedback loops are managed. Looking ahead, research should compare hybrid systems across countries, integrate qualitative community voices with quantitative analysis, and follow students over time to capture long-term effects. We also need studies on enrollment impacts on housing markets and mobility, and on teacher retention within hybrid models. Synthesizing these insights will guide more equitable, evidence-based policy design. Technology can open doors and create new barriers. Virtual schools and data platforms expand access, yet digital divides limit participation and algorithms may favor well-informed families. Districts themselves face unequal digital resources. The icons on this slide point to solutions. Audit tools for fairness, invest in connectivity, and pair technology adoption with targeted supports to close gaps. To reduce stratification, policy can act on several fronts. Use weighted lotteries to prioritize disadvantaged students, provide transportation so geography doesn't block access, regulate choice frameworks and direct weighted funding to high-need schools. Just as important, coordinate education efforts with housing and technology policies and embed equity protections in all designs to keep markets fair. Housing patterns remain pivotal. Residential segregation concentrates advantage and need, while traditional district zoning can mirror neighborhood divides. Depending on regulation, school choice can disrupt or reinforce segregation. Inclusionary zoning shows promise when paired with cross-sector collaboration. The message is clear. Combine housing reform with enrollment rules to broaden access and reduce structural inequities. Choosing the right model is context work. There's no universal best option. Choice can catalyze innovation, yet risks segregation without guardrails. Districts provide stability but may perpetuate geographic inequities. Hybrid, adaptive approaches backed by strong implementation capture the upside of both. Prioritize equity safeguards, high-quality execution, and local fit to ensure families gain real, fair opportunities. Effectiveness is constrained by design and capacity. Parental agency varies with socioeconomic status, so policies can unintentionally widen divides. Choice empowers families but can heighten stratification. District systems promote social unity, yet may embed inequities. The practical route forward is a hybrid, context-aware approach that balances autonomy with fairness and aligns resources to need. As we close, here are research priorities that matter most. Track long-term effects with longitudinal and international studies. Examine how hybrid models shape students and communities beyond test scores. Study mobility and housing intersections to understand who benefits from reform. Then apply what we learn to design sophisticated enrollment frameworks that are equitable and resilient. Context drives results more than labels. Urban, well-regulated charters often show positive academic gains. Rural or underregulated programs show little improvement. District models deliver steadiness but can perpetuate wealth-based inequities. Ultimately, program quality, regulation, and local conditions matter most. Focus improvement efforts on execution quality and resources rather than assuming any single model guarantees success. These systems are intertwined. Digital access gaps block marginalized students from new learning modes. Neighborhood boundaries shape school composition and segregation. Enrollment policies interact with technology and geography in complex ways. That's why cross-sector coordination is essential. Aligning tech access, zoning, and enrollment rules can create inclusive systems that advance both opportunity and cohesion. Reframing the debate means blending equity and autonomy. Controlled choice, supported by fairness-oriented algorithms, can distribute seats more equitably while honoring family preferences. But we must confront research limits, U.S.-centric samples and publication bias, and add qualitative work on cohesion and well-being. The recommendation is clear: rigorous mixed-method studies to validate outcomes in diverse contexts. Future research should stretch further. Run international longitudinal studies, pair statistics with community narratives, and examine hybrid systems' effects on cohesion, mobility, and teacher retention. Experiment with fairness-enhanced enrollment designs to test equity choice trade-offs. The summary box conveys the aim: cross-national, mixed, and experimental work to guide sustainable, equitable enrollment policies for the long term. Here are the key findings to carry forward. No single enrollment model is superior everywhere. Success depends on local context and adaptation. School choice boosts innovation and autonomy, but can raise segregation without safeguards. District systems offer stability, yet embed geography-linked inequities. Policy wins come from blended, context-sensitive frameworks that align individual independence with social fairness. Finally, integrating enrollment with housing and technology amplifies impact. Adopt weighted lotteries and provide targeted transportation aid. Replace rigid zoning with regulated selection and needs-based funding. Align education reform with housing and tech policy. Promote fair, audited technology and link funding to measurable need. Coordinated cross-sector action is our best path to broaden access and reduce stratification.